All of you get my voice and screen. Those are attending in online. Guys, please confirm to me. All of you get my voice and screen. Those are attending in online. Guys, please check it. All of you get my voice and screen. Those are attending in online. Guys, please confirm to me. All of you get my voice and screen. Those are attending in online. Right. All right. Sir. And check it. What we completed there in the last session. What topic here we understand. Right, sir. So in the yesterday's session, we have seen like what there bean factory topic we understand there bean factory part. Okay. Right, sir. So bean factory IOC containers here we understood that. Right, sir. Now tell me what is the job of the IOC container in Spring applications? All right, sir. What is the job of the like IOC container in a Spring framework? Just to create objects and to manage these objects, maintaining objects in the sense supplying that objects to the application. See, one conclusion is very clear. Whatever the bean classes here we created and whatever the application logic we provided inside the bean classes, for that bean classes, we are not going to create objects. Who is going to create objects for the bean components? No, IOC container will create that objects. And IOC container has to supply that objects to the applications. Got it or not? In core Java classes, I given one point. I think whether you remembered or not, I don't know. In core Java classes, number of times I said to you, creating object for a particular class by using new keywords is not at all suggestible, is not recommended in applications. I given this point number of times. Even I given flow of execution for that. Our developers are not going to create objects for the classes in general. I given this type of point. Have you remembered that? All right, sir. Actual meaning is what that? This is the reason here. There's a reason. So in general, we are going to write all bean components. For that bean components, we are not going to prepare objects explicitly. That objects must be created by container only. That is one of the convention here. By thinking about this point only, I given that point in the core Java. All right, now let's understand this. How many containers are available? How many types of containers are available? Two types of containers are existed. What are the two types of containers now? One is bean factory, another one is what their application context. All right, sir. Now bean factory. Now we have discussed about bean factory. To represent this bean factory, one interface was provided by Spring Framework. What is that interface there? Bean factory interface is provided. For this bean factory, one implementation class was provided. What is that implementation class there? That implementation class is what there? XML bean factory. XML bean factory is dependent on what object there? Resource object. So first we have to create which object? No, resource object. What is this resource actually? It is able to manage the content of the Spring configuration file. All right, how many implementations are available for this resource? No, so many implementations are available. Tell me some examples for the implementations of the resource interface. No, byte array resource, class path resource, file system resource, URL resource, servlet context resource, portlet context resource, input stream resource. These many resources are available. Okay. By using either of these resources, we can create resource object. If we inject that resource object to the XML bean factory, automatically bean factory is able to create our objects. This is what exactly the meaning of like what there. What is the meaning of this? Like what there bean factory container. Yes, sir. Got it or not? This is one thing here we understood clearly. All right, now I want to show some practical, that means the total view I want to provide you, try to observe this clearly. I think last class example I've given already in the document. Have we completed this example? Have we executed that? All right. Now observe carefully. I want to show one more small flow related point now try to understand it. Let me show this flow related point here. In the same application here I want to show, now try to understand it. All right, sir. Now this is about resource and all. That's okay, fine. Here we are getting it clearly. This is about our application. Spring config.xml file here, customer we have taken, all the properties here we have taken. Customer.java, normal Java class. Then here we provided what the display customer details. Understand it now. Now here in main.java, in main.java, what we are able to know. First of all, now let me provide some logs. System.out.println of system.out.println of. All right, now before resource creation, something I provided here. Okay, even that resource is not giving money log information for us. Now try to understand this. Okay, just a resource object here we created, or else maybe no need to think about this resource here. Now okay, just I want to write that log here. Before bean factory, creation. Right, now system.out.println of after bean factory creation. Okay, whenever we are calling get bean method, right, we are requesting for customer bean object. System.out.println of before, all right, what I'm telling there, before get bean method, System.out.println of after get bean method. Before get bean method, then what next one here? After get bean method. Customer display details are okay. Observe carefully. One important point here I'm able to show. Observe carefully. In general, as per our awareness, what we are thinking there, when we start container, what process here we are thinking now? Come on, guys. When we start container, what process here we are thinking there? First of all, container must search for Spring configuration file. If it is identified, loading, parsing, reading the content, recognize the bean configuration details, identifying the bean classes, creating all the bean objects, and after creating all the bean objects, then what next one there? Maintaining these bean objects along with their ID attribute values. This is what we are expecting from what their bean factory. One more thing. Now here I want to take some constructor. For what purpose here I'm taking this constructor? Public customer. I want to write some log. System.out.println of customer bean object creating. Customer bean object is creating. that I want to write. Okay, understand this. Customer bean object is creating. Okay, fine. So now coming back to the explanation. So whenever we are creating bean factory, we are expecting to identify Spring configuration while loading, parsing, reading the content, recognize the bean configurations, identifying the bean classes there, then loading the bean class and creating objects for the bean class, instantiating bean class now. After creating bean objects, then what next one here? After creating bean objects and maintaining bean objects. Creating bean objects, then what next one? Maintaining what objects there? Bean objects. That is what we are thinking. Am I right or not? So if it is a case, if I run this program, what we are expecting output now, tell me. First one is what there? Before bean factory creation, that output here we have to get. At the time of bean factory object is creating, customer bean must be created or not? That means customer bean constructor must be executed or not? Customer bean is creating. That is one point. Customer bean is creating. After that, okay, bean object is ready. Total bean factory is also ready. Then we are able to get what output here after bean factory creation. That means first one is before bean factory creation. After that, customer bean is creating. Then after that, after bean factory creation. Then after that, what next one here? Before get a bean. Okay, bean object we are getting. Then what next one here? After get a bean. So this is the standard flow, what we assumed. Am I right or not? Okay, try to check the same flow is coming or not. Try to check the same flow is coming or not. Let me execute this. Read out, guys. I'm not giving any explanation to you. Now read. You have to read that point. Same flow of execution. What do you expected, or any different one? Yes. Not to take this much of time. Give answer here. What I thought there previously, what I given before bean factory creation. At the time of creating bean factory, bean object must be created. Customer bean is creating. Next one is what there? After bean factory. After that, before get bean. After get bean. That we are expecting. But here what we are getting? What is the reality? Before bean factory creation, immediately after bean factory creation, then what next one? Before get bean. Before get bean. At the time of calling get bean only, bean object is created. At the time of calling get bean only, what object is created? No, bean object is created. Next one is after get bean. Then remaining data here we dispatch. So flow of execution is somewhat different or not? Exactly what I am telling there. Whatever the flow of execution we have seen previously, that is somewhat related with application context. But bean factory is differing that flow of execution, is giving some difference about when compared with application context. Now we have to understand this point. We have to understand this particular point. So conclusion I'm telling to you, try to understand the conclusion. What is the conclusion here? Everybody understand this conclusion there. What is the conclusion there now? Conclusion will be very good conclusion. Try to understand this. Conclusion will be bean factory is not creating any bean object as part of its initialization, as part of its startup. But when bean factory will create object, no, bean factory will create bean object on demand. On demand means that when we submit request to the bean factory about a bean object, then only bean factory is going to create bean object. Developer, that means user is sending request to the bean factory about to get a bean object, in the sense just calling get bean method, get bean of some identity. When we call this method, then only bean object will be created. Then only bean object will be created. Otherwise bean object will not be created. This bean factory object will be created without creating any bean object initially. But when we call get bean method with a particular identity, then only bean factory will create the bean object. Then only bean factory will supply the bean object for the respective customer. First time when we call get bean method for a particular bean, then only bean object will be created. Yes, sir. All of you get my point or not? So that means bean factory is not providing bean objects directly at the time of its startup. Bean factory is creating bean objects on demand On demand in the sense, as per the requirement only, it is able to create bean objects. When we submit first request for a particular bean object in the form of get bean method, then only bean object will be created. Yes, sir. All of you get my point or not? This is a clear-cut information about like what their bean factory. Now let me give some analysis part. Now try to understand this analysis part here. All right, by this you are able to get some clarity. Now try to understand this point also. Right, sir. Bean factory internal flow. When we create bean factory, when we create bean factory object, when we create bean factory object, bean factory will perform the following actions. Right, you only tell me guys what exactly the actions that is performing there. When we create a bean factory object, bean factory will perform the following actions. What exactly the actions which are created here? Observe carefully. Point number one. Point number one. Bean factory will take a resource object from the XML bean factory constructor. Okay, right. What object there? No, resource object. Resource object. That's okay, fine. Next one is what there? Then after that, bean factory container will find the name and location. Will find the name and location of the Spring configuration file from resource object. It will find the name and location of the Spring configuration file from resource object. All right, then what next one here? No, bean factory container will find the Spring configuration file and bean factory container will perform Spring configuration file loading, parsing and reading the content. Okay, loading, parsing, comma, reading the content and store the content in a resource object. So the content in what there? Resource object. That's it. Got it or not? That's it. This is going to be happen when we create bean factory. This bean factory is able to find the Spring configuration file from resource object and performs loading, parsing and reading the content from Spring configuration file and maintaining that Spring configuration file data in what the resource object. That's it. Encapsulating Spring configuration details in resource object. That's the meaning of like what their bean factory at the time of startup. Completed. This part is completed. Then what next one here? I'm telling to you. When we access get bean method on a bean factory reference, then bean factory container will perform the following actions. Clear cut information I'm telling to you guys. Now try to understand it what I'm telling to you now. So when we access get bean method on bean factory reference, then bean factory container will perform the following actions. Point number one. What is this number one here? Bean factory container will get the parameter we'll get the parameter value from getBean method. That is ID attribute value of the bean configuration. ID attribute value for the bean configuration. Alright, sir. That is the ID attribute value of the bean configuration, bean class configuration. Nice. Then what next one here? Bean factory container will search for the bean configuration in a resource object on the basis of the provided ID value. Read out this point here, what I am telling you now. So whenever we are calling get bean method, then only bean factory container is what it is doing there. Bean factory container will get parameter value from get bean method. That is the ID attribute value of the bean class configuration. Bean factory container will search for the bean configuration in the resource object on the basis of the provided ID value. Got it or not? Fine. Next point is what there. In a resource object, if any bean in a resource object, if any bean configuration is identified with the provided ID value, then bean factory container then bean factory container will identify the name and location of the bean class. From which attribute there? Class attribute. From which attribute? No, class attribute in bean configuration. Class attribute is providing the name and location of the bean or not? That we have to understand clearly. Okay, fine. When it is identifying the bean class name and location, then immediately what bean factory will do? Bean factory container will identify the bean class and it will perform loading bean class bytecode. Then after that, creating object for the bean class and initializing bean object by executing setter methods as per the property tags declaration in a bean configuration. Is that clear? All of you are getting clarity now? Bean factory container will identify the bean class and it will perform loading bean class bytecode, creating object for bean class and initializing bean object by executing setter methods as per the property text declaration in a bean configuration file. Bean object is created or not? Then after that, what next one here? Bean factory container will manage the generated bean object along with its ID value, and bean factory will return the generated bean object as a return value. That's it. Completed. So again, I'm asking there for this entire flow, only one point here we have to understand. What is that point here? When a bean factory is creating bean objects, no. When a bean factory is creating bean objects, no. That bean objects are created by bean factory at what time? At the time of creating bean factory or requesting for a bean object. After creating bean factory, requesting for bean object, or at the time of creating bean factory? You have to answer for it now. After creating bean factory object, when we request for bean object. After creating bean factory, when we request for bean object, then only bean object is creating. Otherwise it is not creating that bean object. Now tell me, bean objects are created by bean factory on demand or not? That means later situation or earlier situation? Later situation, later situational. Am I right or not? So this is exactly the meaning of lazy initialization or lazy loading. Lazy loading or lazy initialization or lazy initiation. Lazy in the sense like what? The later, later, not at the time of creating object. If we create bean objects at the time of creating container, if we create bean objects at the time of creating container, if we create bean object at the time of creating container, then that is called as what? There eager loading, eager initialization, eager initialization, or early loading, early initialization, or early initialization. Right? If I ask a question to you, tell me what is the difference between bean factory and application context. One main difference here we can say. What is that main difference? No, bean factory is performing lazy initialization, lazy initialization, lazy loading over the bean objects. But application context is performing like what? There early or eager loading, eager initialization, or eager initialization. That difference here we can identify there clearly now. Yes, all of you are getting clarity on this? That's okay, fine now. Leave this point here. This is completed. This is about clearly like what there bean factory container. Clearly we can understand this point here. Bean factory, right, sir? After that, bean factory. What next one here? Another point is what there application context here we have to understand. Clear? Fine. 1 minute. అక్కడ మౌస్ ఉంది కదా దానికి దానిలో బ్యాటరీస్ అయిపోయినాయి దానిలో. Right, sir. Now understand this clearly. Application context. Application context is another container that we have to understand. But how application context is available? What is the advantage of this application context? What is the requirement to go for this application context? That we are going to understand later. But first of all, see how this application context is available for us. How application context is available for us. Application context container. Application context container. Tell me some points about this application context container here now. What we understand this? All right, sir. Now it is an IOC container. It is like what there IOC container. Then what it is able to do actually? It's an IOC container. It's okay. It is able to create bean objects, and it is able to manage all the bean objects. It is able to create all bean objects, and it is able to manage all the bean objects in order to supply to the applications. In order to supply bean objects to the application. Right or not? This is what exactly the meaning of like what there application context IOC context. So it's a generic information only. Bean factory is also doing the same thing. Application context is also be doing the same thing. But what application context is extra that I will provide to you now. Application context is a child container to the bean factory. Is a child container to the bean factory. Okay, it's a child. See, one thing I'm telling to you, inheritance, how inheritance is going to be utilized in advanced level. One example I'm telling to you. Simple example, understand it now. Your parent is available, right? What are the capabilities of your parent now? As of now, the situation I'm telling to you. For example, Listen carefully. Your parent is having a small business. He earn money from the small business only. Understand it now? As you are the child for that parent, no? Right from your childhood, you are seeing that business, right? So you are able to do that business also. As per the habituation, what your parents are given to you, you can do that business. That is a small business only that as you are the educated, but your parent is not educated. In his level, he is doing that business, but still you can do that business. But extra, what is your capability? Along with the responsibilities of the parent, no, the child can have some extra capabilities or not. What extra capabilities for the child? No, he able to do that business. Along with that business, he able to do some other business also. He is capable to perform what there some extra functionalities also, some extra capable, that means extra business also. For example, as you are studying, as you are educated, you can do some software job. Along with that software job, we can run our parent business also. The best example, sir. Then I don't want to go for any other example. We are a simple example. Like, how many of you are aware about Nagarjuna in Telugu industry, might be in Telugu film industries? Nagarjuna is one of the hero. Are you aware about him? Then his father is a legendary actor. Who is it? Akane Naishiro, right? Akane Naishiro is a very good actor, right? Then Nagarjuna is what there is a child, is a legacy. That means he inherited from Nageshwara. Got it or not? So Nageshwara main capability or main properties what they're acting. Nagarjuna is getting that acting or not? As a child, as part of the inheritance, as a child is getting that acting or not? But you are not aware about it. He is the richest businessman in the Telugu industry. Is the richest business, is a more rich, is a very good business magnate in the entire industry. They had number of properties there. Not only acting, he's not not only in acting, he was in real estate. He was in a business. He had so many businesses actually. Getting money from the movies is nothing. Getting money from his businesses is more. They have their own choppers. They had their own choppers. They had their own flights. Getting what I'm telling there? See, he has the capabilities of his parent, and he can do some extra also. That is the capability of the child classes. That actual inheritance topic is this was. What are the properties are available for parent that we are able to use? Along with that properties, we are able to have what there so many. The so many activities we are able to do, extra activities we are able to do, but that parent cannot do. The parent cannot do that extra, but child can do something extra. Best example, Chiranjeevi and Ram Charan. Chiranjeevi has only one habituation, that is what they're acting. He was not involved in other. Of course, politics, there is a difference to leave it, not required. Now he is keep quiet. Now he is in what they're acting school only, acting only. But what about this Ram Charan? He maintained the same legacy or not? He's in acting. Along with that acting, what he is doing now? Do you know that? He has his own flight services. Then he had his own company about the flight services. Services he is providing there. He had his own company. Not only that, because of his wife, might be some other businesses are also existed. Now he is the responsible person for all these things. Means that his parents' activities plus some extra activities. Same principle we can apply to what there bean factory and application context. Application context is what their child for bean factory. So what exactly the activities are available for bean factory? All are available to what their application context and some extra. And some extra. What is that extra that we are going to get benefit as you are the developer? That extra is what there. That point I'm telling to you. Application context is a child container to bean factory. Then it is able to support the advanced features of the applications, like I said you already, internationalization, I18N, that is what their internationalization. Next one is what their event handling or event notification model, data validations, got it or not? And so on and so on and so on. So many things here it able to perform. Sir, got it? So many things get able to perform. Advanced features of the applications like internationalization, event handling, data validations, and so on, along with the basic, functionalities of bean factory. Basic functionalities what bean factory is able to perform. Understand my point here? What exactly the intention I have given there? Understand this point now? What application context is able to do? Application context is a child container to the bean factory. It is able to support the advanced features of the applications like internationalization, event handling, data validations, and so on. Only some of them I have written. So many things are available. I'll give list in the differences between bean factory and application context. I'll give list of this content here. Don't worry for it. Along with this part is important, along with the basic functionalities what bean factory is able to perform, what bean factory is able to perform the basic functionalities, along with that which are supported, along with that advanced features of the applications. Sir, getting clarity or not? This is what exactly the application context that we can understand clearly. Next one is, after that, how this application context is represented. How bean factor is represented there in the form of a bean factory class. Am I right or not? Similarly, how application context is represented there? All right, sir. To represent application context, container, Spring framework has provided a predefined interface, in the form of I want to give that fully qualified name for it. Now try to recognize this. Now I want to get this application context here. Application context arg.spring framework.context. What's the package name? arg.spring framework.context.application context. Right, in the form of arg.spring framework.context.application context. In the form of arg.spring framework.context.application context. And then what next one here? And its implementation classes provided by Spring framework, and its implementation classes are provided by Spring framework in the form of the following classes. All right, sir. Observe carefully. To represent application context container, Spring framework has provided a predefined interface in the form of arg.spring framework.context.application context, and its implementation classes are provided by Spring framework in the form of the following classes. What are these following classes here? We can understand now that classes would be, first one is like where they very good. First one, class path XML application context. Class path XML application context. This is first one. All right, sir. Then what is the purpose of this class path XML application context? Already we have seen number of times. In the previous examples, we have seen that class path XML application context. What is the purpose of this one here? What it able to do now? It is able to get all the Spring configuration details from an XML file existed at the class path environment variable or referred locations. That means Spring configuration file is existing at a particular location which is referred by class path environment variable. From where, if you want to get the configuration details, there we have to use what implementation class there? Class path XML application context. Class path XML application context. That's the point here we have to understand. Clear or not? Fine. Now the second one here, observe carefully. file system XML application context. What is this actually? File system XML application context. What it is able to provide, then now tell me. It is able to get all the Spring configuration details from an XML file which is available in the hard disk or our current system hard disk at a particular file at a particular location in our hard disk, maybe in E drive or maybe in F drive or something else, whatever it may be. Somewhere else it is existed here. Got it or not? Okay, fine. Now observe carefully. All right, sir. It is able to get all the Spring configuration file, Spring configuration. It is able to get all the Spring configuration details from an XML file existing at a particular location in the system hard disk. All right, sir. In the system hard disk. That's it. Now this is about like what there file system XML application context. This is like what I'm telling there. Observe carefully. Class path XML application context, and another one is like what there. What is this? No, file system XML application context. Now the third one is like what there. What is this third one here? All right, sir. Web XML application context. Web XML application context. All right, sir. What is the meaning of this Web XML application context? No, it will be used in web module. It will be used in where there web module. So it is able to get all the configuration details, Spring configuration details from an XML file, which is existing, which is available in what there a particular web application. Is existing in what there web application there. Of course, that will be used in what there in the web applications there. Now, understand it clearly. All right, sir. Now it will be used in web applications. In web applications, it will be used in web applications, and it's able to get all the Spring configuration details. It's able to get all the Spring configuration details from an XML file existing in a web application. Existing in where there in a web application. So all of you are getting it or not? Now this is a clear-cut information here we can understand now. Okay, fine. All right, sir. Then after that, example I'm telling there how we are able to create this application context. No, application context is equal to new class path XML application context where we have to specify the total location. There we are able to specify the total location. That's it. Then by that we are able to create what their application context. But what it able to do as part of this application context, what it able to do, no, that we are going to understand later on. But before that, I want to give one small diagram how containers are available in Spring framework. If you observe this totally, I want to give one simple diagram here. By that we are able to get some clarity. Total containers diagram here I'm telling to you. Now try to observe this clearly. First of all, now here I need to specify IOC containers. Tell me guys, you only tell me how many types of IOC containers are available? Two types. What are the two types? Can know? First one is what there bean factory, and second one is what there application context. All right, sir. Not this diagram here. All right. Now how these things are available here? Bean factory is existed. Now this bean factory has two things. One is what there XML bean factory, and other one is like what their application context. All right, so now here What application context is having now? Application context is having again three classes. That's the first one is like what there? Class path XML application context. Right, sir. Next one after that. File system XML application context. Next one is last one is what there? Web XML application context. Right, so now this is exactly the story here about our content here. Now let me copy this. Then where I want to provide this, just give a minute of time. Right here I want to provide this diagram. Okay, just I given the types of IOC containers. There are given the total diagram, IOC containers, bean factory, and application context. Of course, just I want to delete it, and once again I will provide this. But here I need to go for some changes. No, what changes can be required here? I want to say this is like what their interface. Now this is like what I'm telling their class, and this is like what I'm telling there an interface again. These are classes now. This is class, and this is like what I'm telling to you a class, and this is like what there another class. Here the relationships here I'm telling there. This is like what their implements relation, but this is what their extends relation. Interface to interface extension. Interface to class is what their implements. Now application context is available. There we can understand like what their implements relation is available in every case now. Implements relation is available for class path and all. Okay. Let me take this part. That's it. Right. That overall diagram I given there about this content here. Then what next one here after completion of this? Example code here I'm telling you already we have seen this example code. Application context context is equal to new class path XML application context. Then where we have to provide like what there Spring configuration file here. Spring config dot XML. So this is a simple example how we are able to prepare application context that we understood now. That's okay, fine. After completion of this, what next one here? Application context here we understood. There we have to see one example. Already we have seen so many examples there on the base of this. Just I want to copy one example for this, for the sake of this document. Already we had so many examples there. Let me copy the previous one. Or else, no need to take that previous one. In the same example, I want to change to like what there application context. Clear or not? Now here, let me remove this total content here. Let me remove this total content here. Now tell me, you only tell me what we have to provide there. Application context is equal to new class path XML application context spring config dot XML that we have to provide spring config dot XML. All right, semicolon. Then after that here we have to get like what there customer is equal to application context dot get a bean of a customer. I think so the same thing is available in the file. Okay, we have to perform what there typecasting. So then after that we are getting that customer dot get display customer details. There we are able to get some output. Now let me check this. Right, sir. Of course, bean object creating that I have written there, that we are getting now. 1 minute. Okay. Then after that, after completion of this, what next point here I'm telling there after understanding this, here not required to use these many resources here. Leave them that we are able to provide. Now here itself I want to show the flow of execution, internal flow of execution. Now here we can understand. System outed println of before application context creating, before creating application context. Alright, so then after that, system outed println of after creating application context. System outed println after creating application context. Alright, next one after that, system outed println of before getBean method. Before getBean method. Same thing here I want to write here system outed println of after getBean method. Okay, before getBean method, now it is what there after getBean method. Observe carefully what we are getting now. You have to recognize what was happened here. Right, sir. Before application context and after application context. Before that, in between that, what we are getting there, customer bean object is creating or not. Means that at the time of starting application context, we are creating what there bean objects are created by application context. It's somewhat different from bean factory or not. In the case of bean factory, after creating bean factory, when we request for bean object, then only bean object is creating. But in the case of this application context, at the time of application context startup, there we are getting like what there this bean object. Right now, this is the difference here we can understand. Anyway, example point of view, I want to take this. Right, so now example customer.java spring config.xml. Right, so after this spring config.xml, then another one is like what there main.java. Main.java. That's okay, fine. Okay, clear. Now understand it. This is like what I am showing the program here now, class path XML application context. Am I right or not? Now I want to use file system XML application context here I want to use. Now let's see this one. If you want to see that file system XML application context, spring config.xml file is not required to maintain in the same application, that we can manage at any location outside there. But just we are going to use what there file system content here now. Let's see this one. All of you observe carefully. D drive and Spring 830, then IntelliJ ABB05. All right. Now where it is available here under the resources, Spring config.xml file is available or not? Let me copy this. E:/ABC location. Here I'll paste this. At which location my Spring configuration file is available now? E:/ABC. Now here inside this, what I have to do there? In place of using class path XML application context, there what we have to use there? File system XML application context that we have to provide. File system XML application context. Right, sir. That we provided here. Next one, inside this, then what we are able to do there? Location, name and location of the Spring configuration file here we have to provide. File system application context. What is the location here? No, e:/abc/spring config. e:/abc/spring config.xml. Same XML file. I have not provided any different XML file. Same XML file here I provided. Now let me execute this. Getting the object or not? So if you want to, if your XML file is available at a different location, not in our application, in a different our system hard disk, if it is available in our system hard disk, there we are going to use like what there we are going to use like what there file system XML application context. If your XML file is available under, if your XML file is available under project, no, under the same project, no, there we can go with what there class path XML application context. But if your Spring configuration file is available totally in outside of the application, somewhere else in my system hard disk in a particular file it is available, to get the configuration details from that we have to go with what there file system XML application context. Yes, sir. Got it or not? So have you understood the difference between class path XML application context and file system XML application context? Class path XML application context must be, that means it able to get all the configuration details from an XML file which must be available in the class path, means that that is inside the application. But file system XML application context is able to get all the Spring configuration details from the XML file. That XML file is available where? It's available totally in outside of the respective application there. That difference here we can identify. Okay, fine, sir. This is a program here we can understand. But here itself I'm telling to you here. That's it. It is able to get all the Spring configuration details from an XML file existing at the class path environment variable preferred locations inside the project, inside the present project. I shown separately this point here. We have to understand this. Then after that, what next one here? No, file system XML application context. It is able to get all the Spring configuration details from an XML file existing at a particular location in the system hard disk in outside of the present application. In outside of the present application. Okay, in this scenario here we are able to use in outside hard disk outside of the application, present application. That's okay, fine. Say for example I have a requirement. What is my requirement here? No, I don't want to use this e:/abc in my project. Already it is available here under resources folder. It is available. Am I right or not? Under resources folder it is available here. No, but now I want to get this Spring config.xml file provided data, but not by using XML class path XML application context. Still I want to use what their file system XML application context. My configuration file is available in the application in the resources folder, but my requirement is what there, my intention is what there, I want to get the configuration details from the Spring configuration file, even though it is available in the same application, but I want to use file system application context. File system XML application context I want to use. Yes, sir. Got it or not? All right, now observe carefully here what I am telling to you. If you want to use that same file system XML application context which is available inside the project, there what we have to do, the complete location of the Spring config.xml here we have to provide. There's a total absolute path of we have to provide. What is that absolute path here? Observe carefully. Yeah, this is like what there, another one. D drive Spring 830 IntelliJ ABB05. Then what next one? Resources. Now here we have to collect what there? Slash Spring config.xml. So if you want to use file system XML application context, then what we have to do there? And if our configuration file is available in the same application, then what we have to provide? This we have to use. Yes, sir. All of you are getting it or not? Now we are going to get all the configuration details from which file there? In the current project, whatever the location is available, from that location here we are getting it now. Spring config.xml file. Now let me execute this. That's it. Here we are getting the data or not? Here we are getting output or not? So here we are not getting any file not found exception here. Directly we are getting output there now. Right, sir. This is a clear-cut information here we can understand now. Right? All right, sir. Now about this flow of execution here we have to understand that application context. That means application context, internal flow of execution here we have to understand. Application context, internal flow of execution. What is that internal flow of execution of this application context? I'm not going to type it separately. Already we prepared this flow. Heard about it? Have you heard about this flow of execution? Where we provided this flow of execution there. In the first application, when I complete that first application, there are given like what there? That total flow of execution here are given there. Right, sir. Now here we are providing this one. When we create a container object like above, some points here we are getting there. Get a bean object from the container, or else maybe for showing the difference. Okay, not required here. Now just this data here I want to copy, then where I want to manipulate the content. Easily we can identify this. Now see this one. Now tell me what exactly the points I'm telling there. When we create application context container, application context container object, when we create an application context container object, container will perform the following actions. What actions here we are able to perform there? Identify the Spring configuration file. Am I right or not? Identify what there? Spring configuration file. Right, sir. Identify the Spring configuration file. Okay. Next one is what there? When a Spring configuration file is identified, what next one here we are doing there? Container will perform loading configuration file, parsing configuration file, reading the data from configuration file. That's okay, fine. Then what next one here we have to identify? After getting data from the configuration file, container will recognize all the bean configurations and container will create bean objects for all the bean classes which we configured in the Spring configuration file. Got it or not? Now this is like what the third step here. Next one is what about this fourth one here? No. After creating bean objects, container will manage all the bean objects along with their identity values. That is ID attribute values. Yes, sir. Got it or not? All right, sir. Now next one, fifth point here. I'm telling to you. If we access getBean method, application context container will send the requested bean object to the application. All right, sir. If we access the getBean method, application context container will send the requested bean object to the application. That's it. This is what exactly the internal flow of like what there, this particular one. All right, so now here itself we have to understand container will recognize the bean configuration and container will create bean objects for all the bean classes which we configured in Spring configuration file. Then how it able to perform there? No, container will perform. Right here I want to change it. Container will perform. Right, container will perform bean classes loading, comma bean classes loading. Next one is what there? Bean class instantiation. Instantiation is nothing but what they're creating bean objects and creating bean objects for all the bean classes which we configured in the Spring configuration file. That's it. Right. The total data is okay. That we understood clearly. After completion of this total part, now the next after understanding the total flow, it's very important interview question. Every interview in Spring framework will ask this question there. That question is, what are the differences between Bean factory and application context containers. What exactly the difference between, what are the differences between bean factory and application context containers? So this here we have to understand clearly. This is one of the important interview question for us. Every interview will ask this question now in a Spring framework, so we must answer for it. Right, sir? Shall we see this topic on tomorrow? Then almost 7 to 8 number of points are available. All points I'm going to discuss there and tomorrow. Tomorrow, if I complete this total beans content there, then I will go with what there, some other new topic. That means IOC containers topic might be completed with this, no? After that, I may go with what there, some other topic like what there, total life cycle of the beans inside the Spring framework. How we are going to configure that beans, then how to provide configuration details and all we are going to understand, right? So tomorrow we'll see that content there directly. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Till meet on tomorrow.